To talk or to vote 2 days from today, that's the 26th of October 2017. That is our big story tonight. Lots of people contributing to this discussion, including members of the diplomatic corps.
Now and after the election, we urge Kenyans to renew and redouble their national dialogue about how to unite the country, end ethnic and tribal conflict, and allow everyone to share in the country's bounty. Now,
Njonjo Mue from We the People and Bishop David Kodia of the Anglican Church of Kenya are still with me. Njonjo, so you've said it'll be multiple stakeholders. To agree on what exactly? What would be the possible outcome of these talks?
Yvonne, I think the agenda of this dialogue, I think I should state very clearly that it's not a dialogue about sharing power. It's not about what is so-called nusu mkate. We are talking about, first of all, averting a crisis in the very short term. In the medium term, we are talking about creating an environment in which a free, fair, and credible election can be held as soon as possible to enable the Kenyan people to express their sovereign will as to who will govern them for the next 5 years. And then in the long term, we also need to have a conversation as a country about the root causes of this electoral crisis that we have been confronting every 5 years. And we must deal with those and address the structural issues and see how we can ensure that this sort of conversation, this sort of dialogue, will be the last of its kind because we will have resolved those root causes.
And so what happens while we're talking, once we cross that constitutional threshold of the 31st of this month? What happens? What's the state of government? Who's in charge? How long would the talks take, in your view? Have you thought it through to that point?
Well, basically, our advice to the IEBC chair to approach the Supreme Court to request a vacation of the order for the 26th is all-encompassing. He will not just be asking for a new date. He will also be asking the court to make the necessary orders with regard to how the government is to be run going forward. And of course, you ask how long this should take. We think that the immediate issue is to ensure that the country can be in an environment where a free, fair, and credible election can be held within the shortest time possible. But the dialogue should not stop there. As I've said, there are medium and short and long-term issues that must continue to be addressed by the said dialogue.
All right, there's some who are against the talks for that specific reason. And you're saying you're asking Wafula Chebukati to go to the Supreme Court and get an advisory, first of all, postpone the date of the elections. But surely that would create a bit of more anxiety than we're in already. If we're talking for, what, 60 days, 90 days, 1 month, do you not think that'll continue to create more anxiety, that there might be some sort of vacuum?
You know, Yvonne, there is anxiety, of course. We acknowledge the fact that the economy has suffered, small businesses have been affected, and we feel the pain as well because we are also Kenyans. So we do not take this step lightly. However, we must understand that it is better to resolve a problem once and for all, rather than go over the precipice and trigger an even bigger problem. Those who are saying we need to go back to normal, I think are mistaken. Once we have an election where only one half of the country takes part, first of all, the president will not have the required legitimacy. The president under our constitution is a symbol of national unity. He will not be able to exercise that role. And so we are going to actually enter a period of even a longer and more extended crisis without a clear end in sight. So courageous people at such times as this rise up and offer leadership to help a country to resolve the immediate problem in a manner that enables the country to move forward, rather than say we will go ahead and jump over the cliff and see whether there is something that is waiting for us at the bottom, because that is a recipe for disaster.
Bishop Kodia, who would lead these talks? Wafula Chebukati, the chair of the IEBC, has failed to have the two, that is Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, on the same table. He's met them separately. The religious leaders have not managed to do so. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Archbishop, your Archbishop Ole Sapit, has only managed to meet Raila Odinga, but not Uhuru Kenyatta, and certainly not the two of them together at the same table. So who is this that's going to be able to achieve this?
Yeah, I think is not, the matter does not actually rest only on the two protagonists, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. It is something that affects the entire nation. So every individual, every leader, wherever he is, has a responsibility to jumpstart the process. But the thing is, President Uhuru Kenyatta seems to have developed already an attitude that Raila's side wants have a loaf of his whole bread. And Raila also believes so strongly that Uhuru stole his bread, the whole loaf. So the whole thing is a game, it's a ping-pong game that I think we should not be able to tolerate as a nation. So it's just a question of, are they willing to sacrifice their egos so that the country can move forward?
Okay, Bishop.
I have only 3 reasons.
Bishop, allow me to interject. You're talking about strong hardline stances on either side. Uhuru said he's not willing to meet Raila. He wants to go into an election. So back to my question. I mean, I think it is very clear that these two do not want to meet. Who is it that has the legitimacy, the credibility, and wields, the power of influence over these individuals to get them on the same table?
I think, first of all, their party organs need to be engaged, because I think there are also hardliners on both sides. Those who believe that this is the only way and there is no any other than their way. But again, what I want to say is that there is a confidence crisis in the entire process. Chebukati himself, as a referee, does not have confidence in his own process of election. When he said he does not believe, he cannot guarantee a fair and credible election. Now, asking the nation to accept going to the election, and you know so well that there is no credible or justifiable modalities you have put in place, that's like saying, go and do whatever you want. But if you look at what the NASA side is stating, they say that they had their irreducible minimums, which they presented to Chebukati's commission, and that one was not acceptable to them. Now, later, when only some few days to go, is when Chiloba is asked to go on leave. Whether he was forced or he voluntarily accepted to go on leave, nobody knows. So what I am saying is that let this two, we are ready to meet them. You have said clearly that my own Archbishop had tried to reach both of them, but only managed to reach out to Raila Odinga. Why not Uhuru Kenyatta also coming forward so that he can also, his side of the story can also be put on the table?
Okay, Bishop, have you reached out, Bishop, have you reached out to President Uhuru Kenyatta to get him to meet? If so, what was his response?
No, I'm saying my own Archbishop. Yeah, my own Archbishop, you said it. Yeah, you stated clearly that my Archbishop had tried, but only managed to reach out to Raila Odinga. Yeah. You know, reaching out to the president, sometimes there is that protocol. As for me, with Raila, I can be able to reach Raila because Raila comes from my jurisdiction.
All right. My
Reaching
question,
him
Bishop,
out is not a problem.
My question, Bishop, is did the Archbishop make an attempt at reaching out to President Uhuru Kenyatta? If so, what was his response?
I'm sorry, I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of my Archbishop. So I can't go into details on that.
Okay, fair enough. What I'm hearing from both of you gentlemen tonight is that you're saying we need talks in the country. The biggest question for me, as we conclude, is who is going to bell the cat? Who's going to be the one to do this tough task, to do this, considering there's been hardline stances on either side? So Njonjo, I'll start with you as we close. What sort of compromises need to be made on either side? NASA has said they're going back to the streets to demonstrate tomorrow and on Wednesday. Ahead of that big announcement we're waiting for from Raila Odinga at 5 p.m., Uhuru Kenyatta says we're going ahead with the election. So my two-pronged question to you is, who is this that will get them on the table, in your view? And what are some of the compromises that need to be made on either side if the talks are to happen?
I think in terms of who will bell the cat, Yvonne, we are already rising up to bell the cat, we the people. There has been a fallacy that has developed around Kenya that only political leaders speak for the people, and that could not be further from the truth. Under our constitution, the sovereignty belongs to the people of Kenya, and anybody else exercises that sovereignty through the mandate that we give them. And when it comes to times of crisis such as this, we reserve the right to stand up and say, this is how we want things to be done. So people have been reaching out to the two sides. It is not the first time that this is happening. We are hoping that they will heed wise counsel and see that they can avoid this catastrophe that we are approaching in 2 days' time and do the right thing. And in conclusion, Yvonne, I'd like to say that we must learn from history. In 2007, we waited until after blood had been shed before we could sit down and talk. I think we must learn from history. We have reached a point where there has to be dialogue. What we are asking Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga to tell us, have you reached a point where you have said Kenyan lives are dispensable so that you will let their blood be shed so that you can sign that document that you will agree on with the blood of innocent Kenyans? Or do you have the presence of mind to step back from the brink and be able to negotiate, to allow this country the much needed time we need to ensure that we have a free, fair and credible election?
Njonjo, thanks. Bishop Kodia, what happens if there are no talks between now and 26th?
Yeah, if there is no talk, my fear is that there would be some sort of bloodshed. I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but considering the fact that there is military presence in some of the so-called opposition zones, that one is a cause for worry. Because when the military is involved in a civic duty like election, which is a civilian function, then something definitely is going to be wrong. Because we have witnessed cases of police brutality in most of these regions, and we don't want a repeat of the same. So if talks fail, I think there is doom for our nation.
Thank you very much. Bishop David Kodia from the Bondo Diocese of the Anglican Church of Kenya. Njonjo Mue from We the People. Talks versus polls. We will wait to see what happens in just 2 days from now when that repeat presidential poll is set to take place. Of course, Jubilee saying no talks. Let's go to the election. We don't want to trigger a presidential, constitutional crisis. And of course, the other side saying date or no date, we're in no state to go into an election. That is the conundrum that faces us, dear Kenyans. Thanks for watching The Big Story tonight. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.